Good evening, I'm Adventure Argonaut, and this is my review of Avowed. I completed the game a couple of days ago on stream, and now I'm doing my live review of the game. But before I start, I of course have to see that the streams are all running, since no review really if I'm just talking to myself and the streams are not working. So of course, that's rather important. But yes, everything seems to be a-okay. Okay, let's start the review. So, and I will be discussing the mechanics, the story, and then some of the woke elements in the game. So let's start with the combat mechanics in the game. Okay, yes, good. So the video is playing. Is it bit? I have to alter it. Maybe it's not showing it like the full screen or something. Okay, I guess now it looks better. Okay. So let's see what I wrote here. So the combat is repetitive but okay. And like I used not a blunderbuss, an arquebus, like you see here, basically musket rifle most of the game, but I also did used some melee weapons in the beginning and a pistol as well, like dual wielding both like a sword and shield and a sword and a pistol. But most of the game I used the arquebus and didn't use much magic. So I don't know if the combat would be significantly different using magic, but I have my doubts. And so there's basically like basic three classes, sort of like not strictly, but like these three different trees of abilities you can unlock. There's the fighter, the ranger, and the wizard. So fighter is of course physical fighting. Ranger is more shooting and stuff, and wizard is magic. And then you get some godlike powers for your characters. There's just some extra abilities. And but like you can see here in the video, it's just mostly backing off from enemies, shooting them, then waiting for the gun to reload. So it's but I still found it mostly entertaining. Like it's not the best system, but like many games, many RPGs don't have the best combat system. So I can't be too harsh on it, but it's not too exciting either. And but definitely there were too few enemy types. There's like lizards, spiders, bugs, undead, soldiers, and then mushroom zombies and bears and some elementals or blights as the game calls them. That's pretty much all the enemy types, I think. In the very end, there were like some magical robot thingies. You fought a few of them, but there's too few enemy types definitely, and that would certainly would have improved it if there were more enemies to fight. And but yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about the combat. Like it's it was functional, mostly enjoying, mostly repetitive. So let's move to the next bit of the game. So then the RPG elements. So let's have a look at the some RPG elements of Avowed. And what do I have to say about them? Here's my notes. So yeah, there's some like you can use magic to solve puzzles. There's like fire magic. You can used basically to burn away brambles that block your path in some places, and ice can be used to make temporary shields on water so you can jump higher, or also like shatter some metal grates, and lightning you can use to activate some sort of um, like devices to open doors and such. But it's very superficial system, and doesn't it's basically just fancy way of doing keys and stuff. And yeah, here in the background you can see some of the different skill trees and stuff. But yeah, the RPG wise, the game is very limited. For one, is that you can't really kill NPCs or even random animals unless they're enemies in the wild. It's like if you shoot an NPC in the face and the game hasn't already determined that they're your enemy, then nothing happens. Like they don't even flinch or anything. Like I remember in some JRPG, I think like some Breath of Fire games, and in those games you usually cannot kill NPCs, but like at least like you have the attack button even outside of combat, and you can attack NPCs, and at least they do some flinch or jump a bit, like they're in pain or something. So at least that would have been entertaining, but nothing like that. And the NPCs in the cities, they feel more like furniture. Like some of them walk around a bit and talk a little bit, but it seems very forced. Like I recall one instance, like there was some sort of like, yeah, there was a dead body there, like somebody had been killed, and then there were like soldiers standing in front of it, sort of like move along, nothing to see here. And then there were civilians looking about, but it was like wasn't clear like what was happening. Right, like were the civilians like just curious, or were they like protesting against the guards that, oh, you're brutes, you killed the poor innocent guy, or where they're like, yeah, guards, yeah, you're doing your job, great thing. And the game didn't convey any of it, because it just looked like character models were you know told to stand there in the certain locations, and that's basically all it was. Another thing is like arrows, they don't, well, like they stick to walls. If you shoot an arrow to the wall, it stays there for a few seconds and disappears. And Skyrim and Oblivion, much older games, they stuff like that stays much longer. So yeah, there's many things like that. And of course, and the NPC guards, like really weird thing is that they never really hold weapons, like unless they're enemies, and you see an NPC and they don't have weapons in hand, or even in the like sheath or anything. And that was really weird, like because maybe you could argue that there's something wrong with the engine or something, that it's difficult to make character models with weapons. But there are plenty of enemies using weapons, so why can't just NPCs who stand around or maybe walk around in circles or something, why can't they have any weapons? But at least the game at least has some player choice, like few different endings, or like modular endings, and stuff like that. So it is like so there is some RPG elements in that sense, but it is certainly sort of simplistic and bare bones in that sense. The RPG elements, so a bit disappointing, but didn't ruin the experience altogether. Like the lack of, let's say, simulationistic elements in the game. Then let us move on to bugs. So the game, it was like even before I even played it, I heard about bugs in Avowed, and I experienced some bugs, certainly, but like here I think we will soon see that I will go to a cave, and there should be boss sort of that I'm supposed to, I have a bounty on. I'm supposed to kill them to get the bounty, but the boss never spawned there, so I don't know what went wrong. And there were some other quests um, that like the objective marker didn't function properly, and for the most part in this game you're just supposed to follow the objective marker. It doesn't pretend like it requires lots of attention from the player or anything like that, but a few times sort of bugged out and stuff. But like I didn't have any corrupted saves, because that was one thing I heard was supposedly a thing, that people lost like their saves, so maybe they had to start from beginning or a few hours earlier from an earlier save and stuff. So I didn't have any big problems like that. And there was certainly some lagging and slowing down of the game, and it's partially due to my computer not being up to date enough. It's a few years old now, and but I would argue still that you don't have to, you shouldn't have to have like the latest computer to run a game like this, because I don't think it's really technically looks much better than Skyrim, which is 14 years old already. And I'm pretty sure it would run on this computer, although I never played it on this computer. I played it on older computers, and I think it ran uh, fine just then. So yeah, like personally, still for me, Avowed, it wasn't too buggy. Like certainly things that should be fixed, but nothing that um, was truly detrimental. But of course, like yeah, if your save gets corrupted and you have to go back who knows how many hours, that would suck. But I guess I got lucky or something, since nothing like that happened. Or maybe I was unlucky, and it would have been better if I quit playing the game after 5 hours. Even though I didn't hate the game, I thought it was, for the most part, it was enjoyable. But let's have a look of the next part. So exploration. The exploration bit was some of the best bits of the game, and I'm not the only one who has had held this opinion. I've heard other reviews and people commenting that, like here we can see this, not right now, but like the pink salt stone coral thingy. I think that looked very nice, like maybe my favorite site in the game, and didn't really it doesn't really explain what it is or anything like that. Um, but yeah, the exploration, yeah, there were nice sights, interesting stuff. But another like one thing about the exploration that wasn't so good was the loot, because the loot in the game wasn't that exciting for the most part, because it's like I in the end I had like dozens of rings and necklaces and stuff, but it's like you can only use two rings and one necklace, and for the most part I wanted stuff to that would buff up my perception or stuff like that, or critical hit, because I used my gun. But I had lots of useless rings, lots of the loot. There's lots of like just random crap, food and stuff. Like I don't know, like I don't even know if you could cook in the game, because I never really had to try to find out anything about that, because I had enough healing items and stuff, especially like later on when you get a healer to the party. I didn't have to eat food, because in the early game you have to eat food to heal yourself occasionally to prevent dying. But as you get some healing magic of your own and a healer in the party, then it's a different thing. Um, but yeah, it is like it has some nice looking locations in the game. So yeah, the exploration is definitely the best part in the game. But yeah, loot is, which is part of the reason why you explore is to find loot. But most of the loot was not exciting in the game. And then the companions. Oh my god, looking at this companion is already a horror show. Like, lots of people memed about this character, and yeah, Yatsli, she's quite hideous. Well, I will talk about the characters themselves later on, like the aesthetics. But let's just talk about the companions. So you have four companions in the max in the game, which is, it's not that much. And you can have like two companions in your party at the same time, sort of following you around, helping you fight. And the characters are like, fishman, blue fishman, who is a tank, a dwarf who is a ranger, and with a bow, and an animancer who is a healer basically, and then the ugly rabbit wizard woman. I guess she does decent amount of damage. She's probably the best damage dealer, but my favorite characters were the tank and the healer basically. But the main function of the companions in the combat with you is they're basically to act as human shields and for the healer to heal you, because I think that's just super slow. Like there were so many times that I shoot an enemy and they have like 10 hit points left, and while I'm reloading, I'm like, okay, that companion is right next to the enemy. I wish they would kill him, but nope, they either they're just attacking too slowly or doing something else. And then I managed to reload my gun, and okay, I guess I can just finish the enemy as well, instead of relying on my companions. And another thing, you cannot really order your companions around. At least I didn't find any um, button or commands to do it. Like you cannot say like, okay, um, you defend me, and you should tank, or you should focus on dealing damage. Nothing like that. And especially like many times, since I had a gun, I like to do some sniping. So sometimes I had the higher ground, and there were enemies down in a ravine or something, and they couldn't even get to me or and not easily at least. So I would try to snipe the enemies down there, but then my companions would start, running down into the ravine to melee the enemies and get their asses kicked. Of course, it doesn't really matter if your companions quote unquote die, because the companions cannot die if they get knocked down. They just get up after the fight, so it doesn't really matter. But it's just they're quite dumb. And another thing is like sometimes you have to do some parkour, like jumping and climbing. And when I few times you climb onto some like a hill or something, you have to go through, jump through the several hoops as it were to get there. And then there was like a mini boss fight there or something, and one of my companions wasn't there to help me to tank or anything, to draw attention away from me as the target, because they didn't really know how to climb. Like I guess maybe I should have used some of their abilities to summon them, because sometimes they just seem to like they were, let's say 10 meters away ahead of you, but then you use an ability, their attack abilities, to tell them to okay, attack that guy, and then they would teleport next to you. But yeah, so like I said that there's no way to really command your companions, except all of them have few special attacks, like whether it's the healing for the healer, or the tank has like some shield, or and then the tank has also like shoot his gun at some enemy. So in that sense, you can say like, okay, you can tell them to use their attack on a certain enemy, but it's not it's not a tactic. It's and those abilities, of course, have cooldowns. So it is very limited, like having the companions and stuff. And personality wise, I didn't really care about them. Like the fish guy, the blue skinned fish guy Kai, he was my favorite. Like, he was sort of likable for some reason. I sort of liked him, but the other ones were like, whatever. But let's move on to the next part, and that is writing. So the writing in the game, that was like it's difficult to say, describe how, because it was meh, the writings. It's not so bad. It's funny. It's nothing like that. Like, maybe few instances or something like that. But for the most part, it's like, okay, yeah, like, it's fantasy stuff. It's blah blah. Like, it's not something that really pissed me off most of the time. It's not nothing that, like, this doesn't make any sense. And so yeah, it's very mediocre, like, bad mediocre, because overall the game, I thought it was average, but mediocre is, slightly below average. But although at sometimes it's, just nice, like, if you've been venturing forth in the wilderness, killing lots of enemies, doing quests, and then you meet an NPC, and then you talk to the NPC for a while. It can be a nice change of pace for a while, just to listen to the NPC talk, even though you don't really care what they're saying. But sometimes it worked just in that sense. And of course, like, when you go to like a new town in the game, and you basically have to, quote unquote, have to go talk to every NPC, and every snoop every building and stuff. That's tedious, but I usually find that tedious in, even better RPGs. But maybe that's just me. But I sort of dread it when I have to go to a new town in an RPG, because you're sort of obligated to go find. There might be some loot here, or something, or maybe some important story event that I don't want to miss, so forth. But yeah, the writing is so mediocre. And you find some paper clippings every now and then, like some notes and stuff, and they're written usually in a very boring way. And also, like, the language, the way that people speak, even though it's supposedly medieval fantasy, but it sounds more sometimes very modern, like Reddit like uh, dialogue. That's not good. But yeah, then let's have a look at the story and the setting. Of course, it's partially related to the writing, but I guess I would differentiate the writing is the actual, text that the characters let out from their mouths, their lines and stuff, and this story and setting are the ideas. Like, I do like the ideas and the setting. They're decent for, for an RPG, such as so yeah, I thought the story was better than expected. So you are the envoy of the Aduran Empire, and you've come to the island of Living Lands, some wild frontier, untamed. That there's few communities there and stuff, but it's mostly untamed. And then there's the Dream Scourge, a mushroom zombie virus that turns humans and animals, and dwarves and elves and stuff. Of course, it turns them into mushroom zombies. So the mushroom zombie idea itself isn't anything unique, but and in the beginning of the game, they tried to make it like some big mystery and some horror stuff, and it's like wasn't scary at all in that sense. And yeah, there will be some spoilers, like, yeah, sorry if you get spoiled, but it's not that great, like the story, so you shouldn't be too feel too bad if it gets spoiled. But anyway, the Dream Scourge, you're there to investigate the Dream Scourge and stop it, this zombie virus thingy. And then your protagonist gets visions and dreams from some weird spiritual entity at times, and the spiritual entity itself, like I think the idea itself is fine, but this is like the writing, the lines that this entity gives you, that's really like annoying, tedious. I don't think the entity itself is well written, but the revelation what the entity is, I guess that's a decent plot twist. But anyways, still fairly early on in the game, you get assassinated. You walk into the biggest city in the on the island of Living Lands, and then arrow flies through your gut and you die, and then the entity revives you. But it was sort of, I like murder mysteries. If you watch any of my uh, streams, gaming streams, or at least some of them, you should know I like murder mysteries. So that was sort of like, "Oh, okay, this is interesting," but then you find out who did it, and there's some rebels who rebel against the Adiran Empire, and then you get to decide whether to, I don't know, whether to let the killer go or to kill him, or whether to convince him to turn himself into the authorities. And I did the latter of the options. But because I was sort of expecting that this conspiracy of these rebels that try to kill you and stuff, like it goes deeper, like there's some other powerful people on the island related to it, but didn't really like it. That part, like particular story hook, just fizzled out. So that was a bit disappointing. And then there's conflict with Steel Garrote paladins and the Aederan Empire. So the Steel Garrote there, the game always, everybody says like, oh, they're really brutal assholes. And then the same goes for the Aederan Empire. Everybody tells them they're brutal assholes, and but you don't really see it. Well, with the Steel Garrote you see it, but like I didn't know what is the Aederan Empire. Like I played Pillars of Eternity a decade ago. It's set in the same world, but I don't remember that from the game. Like it probably was there, but I just don't remember it. So it's like it's difficult for me to think like, okay, how should I think of the Adiran Empire, because the game doesn't really explain. um yeah, it doesn't really explain to me what is the empire or anything like that. And the Steel Garrote, like it takes a while for the Steel Garrote to actually show that they are sort of bad guys, and it's a bit too much like comic book like bad guys. But hey, at least you can sort of join them in the game and stuff, so that's good. Um, but yeah, it doesn't do a good job of establishing like why you should like dislike them, or maybe why you should like them and stuff. And but yeah, anyways, you explore the island, you do quests, and eventually you find out that voice in your head, this spiritual entity, is Sapadal or Sapadapadal, the god of the island, and she's some crazy bitch, and also that she is also responsible from the dream scourge. And in the end of the game, you can choose either to kill her or to free her, because she's imprisoned in some garden and stuff. And I of course chose to kill her because she was really annoying. But yeah, the idea of the god speaking to you in dreams is cliche, but I think some cliches do work, and they're cliches because they work. But it's just the implementation it wasn't so good. Like the goddess herself, like the idea, I could appreciate. Like I could appreciate what they tried to do, but they just sort of fell short of it. But at least, because for the most part I didn't care about the story and the writing, but there were some parts of the that at least got me intrigued for a little while. So it wasn't completely terrible. And then cool stuff. I just wanna, since it's still my reviews has been mostly negative, I wanna point out some cool stuff in the game in Avowed. So let's see. So yeah, like there's some side quests that actually, contribute to information and relevant plot points to the main storyline, and I think these were done quite well. I have a couple of examples. For example, the a library was overrun with monsters, or more like the monks were turned into mushroom zombies, and also when you go investigate, you find that somebody has been stealing books from there, and then later on you find out that that's somebody who was stealing the books. They were selling them to the bad guys, the steel garrote, for for confidential information and stuff. So I think that was quite interesting, because quite often in RPGs the side quests, they're just side quests and they have no bearing on the main storyline. But now it's like it's not compulsory for you to do this quest, but it not only gives you experience points and stuff, but it also reveals something, like makes the story make a bit more sense. So I thought that was good. And then there's another side quest, is that there's some rangers in the wilderness, like they have their well, yeah, they are a guild of rangers, whatever they are, like the guard. And the bosses are concerned that a couple of their rangers are missing, and they are worried that there might be a traitor among their midst, like a killer. And then you find out that indeed there is one traitor, and she's killed a couple of guys, because she thinks that the rangers are weak or something, and wants to sell out to the Aeduran Empire. And um, and then you can also find out that where the because there's this city there, and the bad guys are planning to attack it, but you can actually prevent the attack if you find out where they're hiding in some cave or something. And if you kill them beforehand, then the attack won't happen and the city will be spared. But I missed that. Like, I do remember I heard the NPC tell me that, okay, they're in that cave by the waterfall, but there was another waterfall. I went there. It's like, okay, whatever, I don't care what she says. And then the city was burnt down. So that's good. Like, there's some player agency. Your actions affect the world. Like, of course, it's sort of, you know, in another game, a game where I cared more about the plot, I would have reloaded or something, because I want to be the hero and do the good stuff. But here, because I didn't care so much about the story, so it was sort of cool to see the city burn down. Um, but and sort of weirdly, or somewhat contradictorily, it made me care a bit more about the story, because the city could burn down because of my inaction. So that was sort of cool. So yeah, there are some good points in the game. You shouldn't ignore all of them, even though overall it's quite mediocre. But anyways, let's get to the final part, which is wokeness. So, how woke is the game, or Avowed? How woke was it? How woke is it now? Well, for one, um, like the main some developer, I'm not sure if it's the main developer, but they said something like he doesn't want white men to make video games. So yeah, that's not like stuff like that. Say, makes it compulsory for me to say that, okay, you shouldn't support this game monetarily. And also on Steam forums, people got banned from the Avowed forums for anti DEI opinions. Like, that was what the moderators said. Okay, wasn't playing in the background video, anyways. But then there's stuff like that, sort of meta stuff, but the game itself. So yeah, there's few examples of homosexuality being treated as normal in this, medieval fantasy, and it always, takes me out of the game because it doesn't make sense in a setting like, any kind of medieval fantasy or any kind of, historical or pseudo historical fantasy, that, nobody bats an eye if some a guy says like, oh, that's my husband over there, because normally, yeah, people wouldn't accept it. Like, one example I've heard is like the science fiction show The Expanse. I've never watched it, but I think it's like, Earth has been destroyed or something, and humanity is hiding on like a space station, and there, homosexuality is very much, in vogue, because space is limited, so, the breeding is very much limited and stuff. So, in a setting like that, it, being even pro homosexuality makes much more sense, but not in any kind of, historical setting. Or if you want to have homosexuality, you should lean into it and explain like, okay, why is this, why is it, compared to, any historical period, that this game might be, taking, um, like taking inspiration from, like in those, real historical periods, it would have been frowned upon, or even, maybe gotten you executed. But why is this fantasy world different? Like, explain it to me, make me understand, at least try that. But, these games never really do it. And but however, I have to point out, like, Avowed is certainly not the only game or not only RPG in recent years to do something like this. It's, unfortunately, it's sort of like a trend, like, Scald against the Black Priory, this, sort of Lovecraft inspired, dark fantasy game from last year. It also has like a quest where you're supposed to, or I think it was an optional quest, but still, like, you bring a lesbian couple together, and stuff like that. And then, like, of course, Baldur's Gate 3 has, bear sex and supposedly lots of gays and stuff. Haven't played that, so don't know the extent of it. And, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, I've heard it has a trans character. And, and then, of course, Kingdom Come 2 Deliverance, or Kingdom Come 2 Deliverance, it has, the underage gay sex, and fighting against anti-Semitism, and the Mansa Musa, the black guy who is smarter than anybody else in, medieval Bohemia. So yeah, so so in that sense, like, Avowed doesn't really stand out from the rest in terms of wokeness. Um, and, I should point out, like, so yeah, the trend is not unique to games that are labeled woke. Like, some people, well, no, nobody really has called Scald against the Black Priory woke, except, I've said it's borderline woke or something. Or like, some people are defending Kingdom Come Deliverance too, even though it has these elements, but it's not woke and stuff. But it sounds woke to me. And by woke, I mean that it's Marxist subversion, or like cultural Marxist subversion against white, straight, Christian male dominance, because that's how basically the ideology was born, in the 19th century. To Because back then you could have easily argued that back in the, 150 years ago, straight white Christian men ruled the world, and then the ideology of Marxism was, sort of developed to combat that, to have an alternative. But that's not really the case anymore. Like, now it's more, I don't know, multipolar world or whatever. So yeah, it's not accurate at all, but, that's still wokeist believe in this. But anyway, then another woke element is that gender is interchangeable in Avowed and many other modern RPGs. So especially in Avowed, it seems almost like most captains and, guards and leaders are women. And you see lots of women in armor, like in the video in the background there was some, soldier women, lots of them. And personally, if you do fantasy, I think it's, it's acceptable, like, it can be believable if you have some female warriors. But like, if it gets to the point that, it's interchangeable between men and women, then it doesn't really make sense. Because, men are traditionally physically, much stronger, and so on. So at least, like, if you have females that are as good as at fighting as men, you have to have some explanation. Like, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Buffy is really strong because she has basically magical powers that makes her super strong to fight against vampires, something like that. Or, you can I can, accept a few characters like Brienne of Tarth from, Game of Thrones and stuff. um but yeah, that's just, but that too is like, okay, in Avowed is, I guess, is even more blatant in in that respect compared to many other RPGs, but it's still, you see it in a lot of games nowadays. And then of course, there's the appearance issue, because woke people hate making females attractive. And I don't think the females in Avowed are truly ugly, like, not most of them, but they're certainly not attractive. So yeah, there is certainly there that they didn't want to make, eye candy, because that would be bad for them. And of course, there's in character creation, you you get to, or you have to pick your pronouns. It's he, him, she, her, or they, them. And I picked he, him, but still some characters in game called me they. So the game asks me, or asked me for my pronouns, and then it still, used the wrong pronouns on me. So I don't know if that's, I should be insulted or think that's based. And then the third woke element in Avowed is that race is just treated as a superficial cosmetic quality. Like, for one, there's these human races like the fishmen, Rauakea or Aumakua or something like their name, and but they just seem very human to me. They just have this, weird fish, scaly fish skin. So and then there's the ugly bunny bee people. I don't even know what they're called, but they too don't really stand out as a separate race or anything. And then there's, and there's lots of NPCs and stuff that are, basically black people, but they are wearing clearly, like, European style armor. And that doesn't make sense, because, let's say that, you went to, you were in actual, medieval Europe or Renaissance era Europe or whatever. And then you should, you were, let's say you walked the streets of Rome, and then you see people with black skin there. Then it's like, okay, those people are clearly from Africa, but, like, woke games such as Avowed, they treat them like, oh, they can be just as, Roman or Italian as any, white people, and so on. And just doesn't make sense, because, the racial biological reality and skin color, and that it is like, it tells a story of your background, sort of where you are from. But here it doesn't, like, at least I have no idea, like, okay, are Adurans supposedly, like, do they have all races, and what are the other nations in this world anyways? Don't really know about this. It's just, it just looks like California or something, or at least how I imagine California to look like, because I've never been there. But because, in the normal world, each nation is still, there's usually one ethnic group that is, the vast majority of people belong to that ethnic group, and somebody who is of a different race, then they stand out that they are not locals or something, or at least they have ancestry from another place in the world. But games like Avowed treat race and ethnicity just like it's sort of like, okay, do I wear a blue shirt or a red shirt today? It's it seems like a superficial cosmetic thing, but there's something much deeper to it, and it just makes it pointless really to even have different races if everybody seems interchangeable. The same goes with the male and female. But that's basically it. So yeah, it is woke, but overall, I would say that most of your favorite RPGs nowadays are woke by the same metric, except that okay, not all of them, except Kingdom Come to Deliverance. Like the devs don't insult you, but like yeah, about devs supposedly insulted white people and stuff. So yeah, you certainly shouldn't support it. But then let's get to the conclusion. Conclusion to Avowed. Um, so yeah, so I still enjoyed Avowed for the most part. It wasn't super fun, but it wasn't torture. Like you could certainly argue that there would have been dozen other games that I would have enjoyed more. But for the most part, there were of course some things that pissed me off, but that all the best games even pissed me off, and some and then there were some boring parts. But for the most part, I didn't feel like I had to force myself to finish the game. Like if I was locked in an apartment for a weekend with nothing else to do except to have a computer with Avowed on it, I couldn't use internet and I had food and stuff. Like I wouldn't try to gnaw off my limbs. Like I guess I'd find a way to entertain myself with Avowed for for a couple of days. So yeah, it wasn't terrible, definitely. So and that was surprising for me because I went into the game thinking it's gonna be woke garbage, but it was like there are still um some hints of talent in the team, but then there were some other hints that no, like that they have other priorities, I guess. But certainly it is a step back in RPGs from games like Skyrim and Oblivion. They did much of the same stuff as Avowed over a decade ago, and they did it better. So yeah, that still doesn't make it impossible to enjoy the game, but yeah, it is disappointing. Why is the industry going backwards? And yeah, it is woke, but unfortunately, this level of wokeness seems to be the norm. So, maybe we should start advocating to go to a more traditional direction in games. And it's certainly not worth $70 or whatever the different versions of it cost. But I would argue that basically no game is worth $70. Like, for this game, maybe I would pay would say that it's worth $5 or something. But then again, I wouldn't want to support them financially because of their hateful policies towards white men. But yeah, I don't think any game like maybe $50 would have been for the truly best games that are truly great and AAA level and whatever, maybe $50. But still, that's a stretch. I prefer to buy games on a sale, a good sale, a few years later. Anyways, um, but yeah, some culture warriors on YouTube and stuff. They have arbitrarily selective judgments. Like Avowed is labeled as woke trash, but Kingdom Come to Deliverance is even though with underage gay sex, it's supposedly you're supposed to hail it as a victory for quote unquote our side. and well, I disagree. Or like, and then they go to claim games as, proof we are winning the culture war, such as, Helldivers 2. At some point when it was released, everybody was praising it, but then they had then they had to backtrack when Helldivers 2 did the undesirable policy with the PlayStation Network sign in. That, then they backtracked. Sony backtracked on that as well, but still, um, yeah, I'm just saying, like, I'm just trying to be honest and fair here to Avowed. Like, it's an average RPG, and it's woke, but it's not unique in that respect. Like, not unique in its wokeness level. And so, yeah, in that sense, I would say to a certain degree, the negative reputation of Avowed is unearned, because it's overpriced and woke, but so is it most games nowadays. I know I've been repeating the point, but I think it bears repeating this point that, um, if you really care about these issues of wokeness and the so-called culture war and so forth, then um, you should also criticize the games that you find that you like, that the or your community seems to like the Kingdom Come to Deliverance, because the developer Vavra insulted people who had issues with some of the depictions and so forth. But yeah, I don't want to go on that tangent. So yeah, this is my review of Avowed. It's better than expected. I'm Adventure Argonaut. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.